I came back from deployment expecting peace, quiet, and maybe a few weeks to finally breathe. But instead, I came home to find out my land had already been sold. Not listed. Not negotiated. Sold. And the people living on it were already acting like it belonged to them. The worst part? The HOA behind it thought I'd never come back to challenge it. What they didn't realize was that everything they did left a paper trail. And what happened next didn't just reverse the damage. It ended with the court stepping in and taking control of their entire subdivision. Before we get into this, if you enjoy real-life HOA drama and stories where people take things way too far, go ahead and hit like and subscribe to Karen's Stories Daily. It really helps the channel grow. And if you've ever dealt with someone who thinks they can control what isn't theirs, you're going to want to stick around for this one. So this all started before I even left. I owned a piece of land just outside a growing suburban area. It wasn't huge, but it was valuable. A few acres right at the edge of a development that had been expanding for years. My plan was simple. Hold on to it. Let the value grow. Maybe build something later. The property had been in my name for years. Taxes paid. Boundaries clearly marked. No disputes. No shared agreements. Just clean ownership right before I got deployed. I made sure everything was squared away. I had a friend check on the place occasionally, but it was mostly empty land. Nothing that needed daily attention. At the time, the neighboring development was still growing. New homes going up, roads being extended, more people moving in. And with that development came an HOA. Now I had heard about them, but I never dealt with them directly. My land wasn't part of their community, so there was no reason to interact. At least, that's what I thought. While I was gone, things started to change. The development expanded further than expected. New streets, new homes, and eventually they reached the edge of my property. Instead of stopping there, they kept going, and somewhere along the way, someone made a decision that would cause everything that followed. They included my land in their expansion plans. Not officially, not legally. But on paper, in their internal documents, in their sales layouts. They started treating it like it was part of the subdivision. And that's where the problem began. Because once it showed up on their plans, it got shown to buyers. And once buyers saw it, they believed it. Now fast forward to when I came back. I drove out to my property expecting to see open land. Instead, I saw houses, actual houses, driveways, lawns, mailboxes, and people living there. For a second, I honestly thought I had the wrong location, but I didn't. The road layout had changed slightly, but the landmarks were the same. This was my land. Or at least, it used to be. I pulled over and just sat there, trying to process what I was seeing. Then, I got out and walked up to one of the houses. A guy was outside, washing his car. I asked him how long he had lived there. He said about 8 months. 8 months. That meant construction had started while I was still deployed. I asked him who sold him the property. He said the development company working with the HOA. That's when everything clicked. I thanked him, got back in my truck, and drove straight to the county records office. I needed to see what had actually been filed, because there's no way you can legally sell land you don't own. At least, that's what I believed. When I got there, I requested records for my property. And that's when things got strange. Because according to some of the documents, portions of my land had been included in subdivision filings. Not transferred, not legally reassigned, but referenced. Used. Almost like they had built around the idea that it was theirs, without ever actually owning it. And that's where things got dangerous. Because once homes are built and sold based on that assumption, you've got a serious legal mess. I contacted a real estate attorney immediately, sat down with him, laid everything out. He went through the documents carefully. Then he leaned back and said something I won't forget. They built and sold homes on land they don't legally own. I said, so, what does that mean? He said, it means this is going to get complicated and expensive. For them, we started digging deeper, pulling permits, reviewing filings, tracking timelines. And the more we uncovered, the worse it looked. The HOA and the development company had moved forward with construction based on incorrect assumptions, or possibly deliberate misrepresentation. Either way, they never had legal ownership of my land. Not once, but they built on it, sold it, and people were living there. Now here's where things got tricky. The homeowners weren't the villains here. They bought those homes in good faith. They believed everything was legitimate. So the goal wasn't to punish them. It was to hold the people responsible accountable, which meant going after the HOA and the developers. We filed legal action, and once that process started, Everything slowed down. Because now, it wasn't just a dispute. It was a case. A serious one. The HOA tried to respond at first, claimed there had been confusion, clerical errors. Miscommunication. But the documents didn't support that. Because this wasn't one mistake. It was a pattern. Plans. Sales. Approvals. All based on land they didn't own. As the case moved forward, the court started reviewing everything. Property lines, ownership records, construction permits, sales agreements. And piece by piece, the truth came out. My ownership was clear. Undisputed. And their actions completely unauthorized. That's when the pressure shifted. Because now the question wasn't whether they made a mistake. It was how they were going to fix it. And that's where the outcome shocked everyone. Instead of forcing individual homeowners into impossible situations, the court focused on the organizations responsible, the HOA. The developers, and the entities involved in approving and managing the subdivision. Financial liability was massive. We're talking about land value, construction costs, damages, legal fees, everything. And when those numbers added up, they couldn't cover it. That's when the court stepped in. Because when an organization can't meet its legal obligations, assets come into play. And in this case, that meant the subdivision itself. Control shifted, management changed, and the people who thought they had gotten away with it didn't. At all. The HOA board was removed, developers faced consequences, and the entire situation became something people in the area still talk about. As for me, my land rights were restored. Compensation was handled through the legal process. And the situation was resolved in a way that protected innocent homeowners while holding the responsible parties accountable. Looking back, it still feels unreal. Coming home to find your property gone, and then watching everything unfold like that. But it also showed something important. Just because someone builds on land doesn't mean it's theirs. Ownership matters. And eventually, the truth catches up. If you've ever seen something like this or dealt with an HOA that went way too far, let me know in the comments. And if you enjoyed this story, share it with someone who loves real-life drama. And make sure you're subscribed to Karen's Stories Daily for more stories, where people learn the hard way that you can't take what isn't yours and expect nothing to happen.